All right. Well, it's another episode, and this time we're gonna talk about what what happened to the two political parties and what happened to America that even allowed the figure of Trump to exist. Because I mean, I kind of wish that someone like that had never come to exist, though I've kind of admitted in some other episodes that he's, I guess a correction or a cultural correction or something like that. But we need to find out why why did he come into existence? And to help us out, we brought Mark Modarelli back to sort of give us his perspective on those sort of ideas and events. So let's start it off. So, Mr. Modarelli, let's start with Reagan. So what do you think Reagan did to the Republicans, and what happened to the Democrats during his presidency?
Reagan, and it's interesting because Victor Davis Hanson was just comparing today. What Reagan did was he came in and, after Carter, things were pretty bad. After Vietnam, the nation's opinion of itself, there was a great deal of shame over Vietnam. The military was dispirited, and people felt bad for being Americans. I was pretty young at the time. I don't remember. This is all historical stuff, but I do remember he's the first president I can really. I mean, I remember Carter, but I didn't really pick anything up. But Reagan made people proud to be an American again. He tapped into the same, the so-called Reagan Democrats, right? And there was a spirit of patriotism. He was going to be apologetic for being American. He wasn't going to excuse shortcomings and failings, but he reinvigorated the party, and he did it in ways that even defied the institutional Republican Party. He was not their first choice, and they thought he was going to lose. But he brought a whole bunch of people into the fold of the Republican Party, and his plans actually worked. Someone was pointing out today that there was no opposition to renaming Reagan Airport. Even the Democrats voted to approve that. Those who had been opposed to him. He worked with Tip O'Neill. He worked with a Democratic Congress, and he got things done.
True. You are cutting in and out.
Economy,
You are cutting in and out a little bit. So just let you
yeah,
know.
the economy grew. The economy grew substantially, and things. But he again was. I mean, he'd been a politician, but he'd been an actor, and of course, there was like an actor can't be the president. There's no way. It has to be, somebody who's, deep
Lifelong politician sort of thing.
Somebody who's had other offices. He'd had a successful governorship in California, but he was also a guy who, told it like it was. I mean, he told the colleges. There's a great video clip of him, college administrators saying, "Well, we have a right to protest," and he said, "Of course you do, but you also are supposed to be teaching these people that they can't destroy property, that's against the law for them to do that. That's part of your job as an instructor." And he called them out and walked out of the room, and people were like, "What?" So everyone was sure it was the end of the world and it was going to be World War. And he spoke tough about security and defense and rebuilding the military. Everyone was sure that he was going to bring on a nuclear war with the Soviet Union at the time, and of course that didn't materialize.
No, luckily he and Gorbachev kind of worked it out.
Well, he understood that you could outspend him, and he bluffed. I mean, the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars. I mean, he claimed he was launching these programs and starting these things, and he knew that international politics was a game of poker as much as it was a game of chess. You had to have an understanding of how to deal with people, and you couldn't do it idealistically. You had to play your strengths. And so, again, the collapse of the Soviet Empire is a result of Reagan's policies, because they couldn't outspend him. That he won the Cold War. Most will agree with that.
Indeed.
And he knew that system wouldn't stand, and he also called it what it was. He was the one who said the evil empire. So again, as far as the trend towards Trump goes,
what did Reagan do to the Republican Party? Like, what did he give them?
Well, he gave them respectability back and a degree of power and influence that they hadn't had. I mean, they were suffering immensely. And he gave him a real shot in the arm because, again, he was not, he wasn't populist by any stretch in the way we see Trump, but he did speak to something in people. And it wasn't something that, and this is where the similarity, it wasn't something that intellectuals think of, and that, in fact, certainly intellectuals on the left sort of look down upon. And that is a sense of belonging and a sense of promise. And, he gave them a face, a real front man who spoke to people and who people felt they could genuinely trust. Someone had a great point. He went out into the same states that Trump went and campaigned in. And Ronald Reagan was a guy who wore cowboy boots, and you could see him out working on his ranch and mixing with ordinary people. And there's a whole swath of America that's still that way, that's still, that appeals to, that not, dressed up cocktail party, a cellar corridor, whatever they call it over there.
Yeah. The
thing. And
I can't really think of a good way to say it, but I know what you're talking about. It's like yeah, it's why they called Bush the guy you could have a beer with, which I never really thought that, but okay.
Yeah, and so he gave them that, which was good, and a sense of connection, with their roots, by the way, which is in the individual. I mean, conservatism, at any rate, it's in the individual, and it's about two ranchers who live next to one another, and they don't have anybody messing with them. They resolve their disputes themselves, and they don't need help. A spirit of self-reliance and things. And again, now he probably would have wanted to have gone more, but he also, again, was not libertarian in any sense. In terms of non-intervention, he understood that America had a responsibility, and but the institutional Republicans thought he was, pretty dangerous, and they had put forward Ford before. And of course, the Republicans were recovering. You needed somebody to bring them out of the Nixon nonsense,
Yeah.
So he gave them their legitimacy back. I mean, you could say, which was obviously essential after the Nixon debacle and all that.
Indeed. So what do you think? Reagan was basically the '80s, and
Yep.
for the Republicans. So what did happen to the Democrats in the '80s? Do you think? What influenced them, or how did they sort of evolve to, I guess not necessarily accommodate Reagan, but what kind of what did they change into as a result of like Reagan and some of those ideas and the downfall of the Soviet Union?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you had so you had Reagan, and then you had Bush.
Daddy Bush.
Yeah. And then, of course, 8 years of Clinton after that. And the Democrats, I don't know, I wasn't too politically plugged in, and this is, me looking at history, but a lot of their stuff, their response was, whether it was in response to Reagan's Supreme Court nominees, borking them, the so-called borking the Supreme Court nominees, where they blocked until, he couldn't be, they would push off his nominations and stuff like that, and Clarence Thomas, but they started to resort to, it's an interesting thing, they started to resort to character attacks and spinning stuff out. So Clarence Thomas, that whole controversy with Anita Hill, and
yeah, that whole shebang.
And it was a weird thing because here were people who had, had Kennedy and,
LBJ and FDR and
sure, and but
some guys who maybe you didn't like some of the stuff that they did, but at least they had some legitimate arguments about some stuff that they could.
Well,
put
sure,
forth.
And the thing was, you were going to argue that treatment of women was going to withhold someone from an office, and you had well, Kennedy, we all know about that. I mean, it certainly wasn't a problem on that side of the aisle, right?
Oh no.
But the Democrats themselves were finding themselves in a post, and David Horowitz is very clear on this, very controversial, but he was in on it in the 60s and 70s and converted because he saw what was happening. But the radical left had hijacked the Democratic Party, so you didn't have Kennedy Democrats anymore. So they were in many ways, you still had the old holdovers, and Ted Kennedy was, of course, a clear example of this. And it was he who spearheaded the rejection of Reagan's nominees and stuff like that. And into that mix then came Slick Willie, yeah? And
Yep.
the Democrats were what they've been about. And that's about power. I mean, it was about, it didn't matter if you had some shady stuff in the past. If you could win, that's what we wanted. Because the ends, right? The ends we want to promote will be the ones that justify it. And Clinton came in left, and it was an interesting thing because Clinton's second term was very different. After the Newt Gingrich and them swept power, and he had to deal with Congress, he started coming back towards the middle. And this outraged certainly the intellectual Democrats, the extreme left.
The colleges.
And, yeah, exactly. The university liberals. Because they, again, had an ideological mode. Now, one of the things, again, Reagan had learned to work with the Democratic Congress, and they had their differences, but he got stuff done. And Clinton, who came in wanting to, claiming anyway that he wanted to do more, then found that he had to compromise and work with the Congress too, and they got stuff done. And so, and of course, and at the center of all this, I have to say, is the information age. So, the 90s, you have the internet growing and, dissemination of information in ways that you just didn't have in the 70s and the 80s, for the most part. And that changes everything because now you have increasingly, people who think they know more and have the answers. And so there's increasing unrest and a desire for, one extreme or the other to be adopted and pressure. So again, Clinton can't please anybody. He's too left for the...
He's too left for the right and too right for the left.
Right, and too right for the left, right? And which led to, again, the George W. Bush thing. One of the things that starts happening is everyone starts following polls. I mean, one of the things Reagan understood was, I think anyway, is he got elected and did what he thought was right. And he trusted that if he did the right thing and the results paid off, people would elect him again. But he wasn't following polls. Information ages are characterized by a fascination and often an over-reliance on data. So what you see is people taking positions, and again, the Clintons made their career out of this, following polls and saying whatever the poll indicates you should say in order to keep popularity, right?
Yep.
And
which is only going to work as long as the polls are unbiased.
Right.
Which more and more, as we basically saw this election, they were completely biased.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Do we elect someone to follow polls, or do we elect someone to read?
I mean,
right?
I should hope we elect someone to do right by as many people as possible.
Right. Because again, the idea is, look, I elect you. We elect a president because we need somebody who's going to know the stuff that we can't know and make the decision, and we elect them and empower them to make that decision. And it's difficult decisions. But politicians who are more concerned, and this is why, Trump's talking about term limits, which if he can get it done would be a bloody miracle, because I don't know how Congress is going to go along with him. But
hopefully not.
Politicians who are interested in getting reelected, they're not going to see. They're going to see everything in terms of polls and popularity to ensure their continuance of their job. And that's not because they're evil. That's because they're human. We all want to keep our jobs. I mean, that's a normal thing. I don't
remember if it's the old joke, but it's like senators, do their job for 2 years and then spend the rest campaigning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
undoubtedly, yeah,
know. And I actually think one other thing that kind of goes a little, just to back up a second, goes a little unmissed, especially in the 80s and 90s, because I saw a video a few days ago, not a few days ago, it was a couple of weeks ago. Did you ever see the video? I forget who it was, but it was like a Soviet KGB defector talking about like the what was it? The moral changing moral, what was it? Casey?
Oh no, I know. It was on regards to the Frankfurt School of Liberal Thought, which is currently the mainstream liberal thought. It was developed and refined during the 60s. It was pushed with the hippie movement initially, but since then it has invaded and nested within our social sciences.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because the reason I wanted to point I was pointing it out because the Frankfurt School, like you said, it infected our colleges. And the reason I mentioned this video is a KGB defector talking about, how did you, well, what did the KGB spend its money on? He says, well, contrary to popular belief, especially in American movies and whatnot, he said, the KGB spent only about 15% of its budget on actual ground operations and intelligence gathering. What it spent most of its money on was like the Frankfurt School kind of stuff, because you realize that if you're going to do our job for us, we don't need to do anything. So it's what happens when and that's what I think kind of is leading to this this climax of crazy left-wing people, is just because you had an entire generation educated on nothing but Marx and and multiculturalism and a whole bunch of stuff that we know is garbage at this point.
Yes. Yeah. I did all that in grad school. And I remember reading a lot of this stuff from the Frankfurt School guys and people they influenced. And I remember thinking, gosh, and talking to my professors and being like, I'm not seeing what's here. I mean, it's all really confusing, but it seems to me like there's nothing there. And I sort of attribute it to, they sort of mystify you and make you feel like you're stupid. You just don't get it, And then at one point I finally realized, shit, there really is nothing here. I mean, this is, and it was part of the plan. The post-structuralists and all that. Roger Scruton's tremendous. He has a great book called Fools, Firebrands, and Frauds, where he basically goes through and exposes, this thing. And it's what they call cultural Marxism now, right? The idea was, and here's what happened is that took hold. And then after the Soviet Union collapsed, they realized, and this was the weird thing, is you would think that it would be an opportunity for them, because, and really, this has happened in the intellectual fields. So after it was revealed Nikita Khrushchev revealed what Stalin had actually done. And so the Communist Party, in the West was completely discredited, right? So they realized that, okay, politically we can't do this. Yeah. And so it migrated underground into the schools.
What can you do when you can't convince adults of your arguments? Go to the kids.
Right.
Because they need very little convincing, which is, one thing I'm very, very glad that, we got that, that Bellarmine gives its kids, because, you come out of Bellarmine at least with a good chunk of your critical faculties intact. It's one of the reasons why It's one of the reasons why even sitting in, as more or less a Bernie supporter, sitting in I had a class called University 101 in my first quarter, which is basically just talking about how do you, sign up for classes, how do you do this? It's use the functions of the university. But we literally had a whole day of, it was like an hour-long class period where two people came in from the diversity office and talked to us about the 10 different ways people can identify each other with sex, gender, race, ethnicity, and just listen all this crap. And I remember sitting in the back of the classroom, twiddling with some cards in my hand, and I was like, "This is just total bullcrap."
Right.
It's like I don't care about any of this stuff. I don't care about what a person can identify as. I care about what they think.
Right.
So even back then, I could kind of see the bullcrap, and then once it finally came to full fruition with. After a while, just kind of and at that time, I was watching the Young Turks almost on the daily. So it was.
You were watching the Young Turks.
Yeah. I got out because I got out while they were still. I got out at the perfect time because right when I got out, or right when I was about to get out, because I was kind of losing hope, because I liked what they said about Bernie, but I didn't like anything else they really said. This to and fro. But then I saw Milo Yiannopoulos do an interview with Dave Rubin, and I watched him go, and I still remember that day going. I looked at him and it said Milo Yiannopoulos on Trump and this, and I'm like, he's obviously a Trump supporter. I don't want to watch him. And then I come back a week later and I look at the same video and I'm like, do I want to watch him? And I was like, no. I come back a few days later and I'm like, I can't. And then my mind finally went, the logical side went, look, if you can't hear the opponent's arguments and defeat them, then you don't have good arguments yourself. I was like, okay, fine, let's watch it. Watch the whole thing, and I was like, have I been in the wrong this whole time?
It's a wonderfully illuminating moment, isn't it? I tell people that. We were just talking about this today, because I got kids. I had a kid for the second time in probably in 2 months. After class, come up and go, gosh, I am so glad you talked today, because, I'm a conservative and I'm afraid to tell anybody, you know. And I was like, my God, what, you know?
It's like admitting that you're like I think they're trying to make it the equivalent of like admitting that you like I don't know, that you're like a bigot of some kind. I don't know, like that, like it's like, guys.
Oh no, that's right.
I don't like chocolate cake, or even worse than that. It's just like you're a Republican, and then of course, you know, what comes after that? Racist, misogynist, homophobe, all that. Yeah.
Right, all the things that reveal that they don't have a legitimate argument.
But that's what happened, I think, to the left, at least in the 80s and 90s, because it's a weird. You said the Soviet Union died. Well, I'd say it didn't really die. It just changed shape. Because what happens when you can't be, like I said, when you can't convince adults that, you know, come here, we have this awesome stuff. Well, go to the kids. And the thing is, they'll never question it for the most part if they're not taught to. And even then, the very doctrine in and of itself treats anything that disagrees with it as evil and hate speech.
Right, so, because it can't deal with it on its legitimate terms.
Yeah. So
which is why, you squelch individuals. I think you're right that change throughout the 80s and 90s. I mean, one of the things that happened is, who's this guy, Tim Pye or something? He's a British guy. He did a great one where, they've lost the capacity to debate. They've lost the capacity to argue. They resort to emotional appeal, which is, again, great for getting you into power.
But then when you're actually in power,
if you don't have force to keep it down, to keep down any dissenting opinions, like I said, every great revolution has used emotion to get into power, but they've all had to use terror and violence to keep power. I mean, whether it's the French Revolution,
at least the
Russian
ones,
Revolution,
at least the ones that didn't have a plan.
Yeah,
I mean, the only reason the American Revolution worked is because we had a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
and you had a bunch of people who were already self-sufficient and self-reliant because they'd been colonists. So you didn't have this. We have this urgent need to find a way to feed people and take care of them. We don't have time to figure out a plan because people could take care of themselves. They'd been doing it for a long time. So you had time to go, okay, we'll try the Articles of Confederation for a while. And no, that didn't work out. Okay, let's do the thing. How many years is that? 12, 13 years between the two, where it may not be functioning the way we want it, but people aren't, starving and,
it was acceptable.
People have a way of doing things, but when you throw out the thing and you don't have anything to put in its place, you got a big time problem.
Because then everyone's going to want to have a say in how it's going to be set up, and even the people who really don't have any, don't have anything good to say are going to want to have something to say.
Right.
And I mean, granted, even if they don't have good things to say, they should still say them. But the difference is like, I think at least the founding fathers understood. It's like, look, these people, I think they at least understood that, as you said, these people are self-sufficient colonists. They don't really need very much. So so if we try to impose anything on them, we're not going to get any support, and our revolution's going to fail.
Right.
So I think in at least a little bit, the reason the Constitution and the Articles of Confederation were so hands off was because that was the only way they were going to get any kind of support.
No, that's right, and they also, these guys were engaged on a serious quest to figure out how do you preserve liberty. They knew, the one thing they knew with certainty well enough was, well, not by taxation without representation, so screw the Brits. We're going to get out of that.
Exactly.
But then, okay, but what's it going to look like? What will it look like for that to happen? And, it's quite amazing when you consider the brains that came together at that particular historical moment, and and you'll even to hear him tell it, the disagreements they had, even in arguing about it, and how they finally resolved and approved those problems. Most of them
kind of staggering.
About it. Yeah, no, most of them will talk about it like it was a miracle. They'll tell you it was providential because they went into meetings and were quite convinced that there was no way they were going to find a way, and somehow, without anybody going, "Hey, okay, let's just do it," it came together, and these very, very powerful intellects and different egos came together to create a system that they thought would maximum preserve liberty and still make them a viable emerging nation on the world stage. And I mean,
it got us pretty far, I have to admit.
Oh yeah, I mean, and so getting back to what happens, what's happened in the last
30-ish
years
years.
lead up to Trump.
Well, let's go to 2000, year 2000 forward.
Okay.
So Bush gets elected.
Right. 9/11 changes everything.
Yeah, as some say, that was the 9/11 was. I heard someone say that 9/11 was the first time. That what would they say exactly? I might be butchering this a little bit, but I think what I heard someone say online somewhere says like 9/11 was the first time that Islam declared a war on Western values, in a way, and and while that's that may be a little bit stretch, it's not far off.
No.
Because I mean, even when we were helping the Mujahideen against the Russians, I mean, they still weren't good people.
Right.
So, yeah. That's 9/11 changes everything. I think at least at that point, the country was somewhat united that we needed to do something about it. And whether you were for Iraq or against it, I've kind of just sort of said, you know what, I still think it was probably a bad idea, but at the time, we've stuck with it now, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
I care less and less as every year passes about whether it was a good idea or not. So.
Right. Look, I will say that again, there was united, and it was tragic how brief that unity was. Again, Horowitz is very clear on this, that you saw people again following trends. So people who voted to approve the war. I mean, you talk about what happens to the parties. In previous times when America was under attack, partisan differences would be swallowed. People were adults. They weren't following polls. They understood that, in order to achieve victory, this is what you had to do. And there's a nice thing about war, which economists like, and the left has been looking for the moral equivalent of war for a long time because it unites all the forces, right? And they wish global warming would be that, so that everybody would go, okay, yeah, we have to make these sacrifices, which is easy to do in war. But
the problem is, I still think they're a little hypocritical on how do we solve global warming. If we've said, nuclear, they won't put it on the table, and I'm not going to get behind them unless they put it on the table.
No, that's right. It's but they play politics with this too, and this was the great problem that you have in managing a democratized information feed. I mean, the fact that everybody gets the information. In the 90s, you had Drudge bringing down the Clintons, or at least bringing them into disrepute, exposing things. I mean, it changed everything. So the political calculations now had to factor in these things that they just hadn't had to deal with before.
Yep.
The difference between, public perception and private life and all those lines were being blurred. And so party apparatus, they became increasingly indistinguishable in a lot of ways. I mean, Bush, the way he spent money, the way he increased the size of government in response to 9/11, the conservatives were like, what are you doing, right?
It's like, dude, this is insane. What do you do? I mean, I think probably the best example of it was the giant prescription drug program.
Right.
Like, I mean, I can get it. You need to go to war. If you're going to go to war, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, you're going to need to spend a lot of money to do that. So I get that. But, you don't need, Homeland Security, TSA is part of Homeland. You don't need Homeland, NSA, and the NSA and the CIA. It's like, can we all do that in maybe one or maybe two at most? You don't need these three different agencies all working on basically the same thing. And you have the FBI, and the federal government gets massive. But you see, I get to war spending. I don't get all the extra stuff. That's where I draw the line.
And a lot of that was, again, was poll based. So you get involved. Yeah,
this is kind of why I brought you here, because remember, Casey and I were like 7 and 8 years old at the time.
Yeah, no. I mean, looking back, it's one of the classic government things, and this is where they're indistinguishable. And Reagan, I'd like to think, wouldn't have done it, and no businessman would have done it. But half the reason 9/11 occurred was, of course, that one of the first findings of the thing was, okay, CIA is not speaking to FBI, is not speaking to local law, whatever, right? That they weren't communicating with each other, that they were having little partisan, fights. So what we need is another organization. Wait, what? Right?
I thought this was the problem.
Right, exactly. So you create another thing whose job it is to make sure they communicate. So now we have a third one that has to communicate. Okay, whatever. But that's a very, very liberal, very left response, right? Create more departments.
Create more government.
Yeah. But what you had was suddenly people were posturing about war and the Iraq deal. Yeah, whether you agree with it or not, once you go in to win. And anything short of that, politicians have a hard time with war because they want to know the outcome. They want to know and be able to predict its effect on their careers. And
that's pretty hard to do.
No, it's impossible to do. And you can't, you can decide, we can sort out who's responsible for what after the fact, but while we're in it, we're not going to have these discussions, Hillary Clinton voted for it. The entire international community, thought that the intelligence was good. Okay. And the jury's not even out. I mean, I would be very surprised if some of those weapons weren't in Syria, But the lack of faith in government, and the sense that this is the thing that I think really led to Trump, the sense that these two parties are indistinguishable, that they both say one thing and do another. And how could they be indistinguishable if they're just following polls, right? If they're just trying to maintain power, then how could they really be said to be acting in the interest of people? And in particular,
exactly. If everyone wants the same thing, I mean, what are they gonna say when they do their speeches? They're gonna say pretty much the same stuff. I mean, granted, they'll dress it up differently so they don't sound like, oh, he's turned to the other side, but I mean, break it down at most.
And what happened was Obama came along and appealed to emotion. So the Bush years was it was war's complicated and it's difficult, and so the prescription drug thing and immigration and stuff like that, that's all stuff that you can throw out there, not as a smokescreen, but the real issues, individual liberties relative to the Patriot Act, things like that.
Yeah.
Those are complex things.
Yeah, the Patriot Act, I think, is the biggest reason why I really can't ever even remotely like that whole era, Bush or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't do it. Well, as an avid internet user, it's like every time I see more censorship or more spying on the internet, I'm like, stop it! What are you guys doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people are not gonna like you for this.
No, there's a Plane to the Edge is a great book by a guy who was NSA director for a long time, and he very candidly talks about how difficult it is to manage that. You have to balance those things. And again, but it's a big, long book that it gets into the complexities and makes you appreciate and go, okay, yeah, I don't like it either, but at least I now understand, how they were trying to balance it, and they were.
Yeah, actually, here's an interesting, there's one of my favorite lines. Have you ever seen the show Person of Interest?
A few times, yeah.
So you remember the basic premise of the show?
Mm-hmm.
There's a machine that watches everything and can predict terrorist attacks and normal violent crime.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the lines that Harold Finch, the guy who built the machine, says is, he said, the people wanted to be protected. They just didn't know how they were being. They just didn't want to know how they were being protected.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, now that I think about it, is actually a very, very accurate description of how that whole situation was going. Is people wanted protection, but they didn't want to know what the government was doing.
Right.
If they knew, they probably wouldn't like it. So
yeah.
It's the great trade-off.
Right, and so then the Republicans get painted as this intrusive violator of liberties, but at the same time, there isn't a second attack. And a recent book came out that talked about a guy who interviewed a bunch of detainees in Gitmo and stuff, and talked about how they didn't think Bush was going to punch him in the mouth as hard as he did, that they had all these other attacks planned that they weren't even able to execute because of the ferocity of the response. And so, it kept people protected. It's controversial. And in the end, again, what people want to feel, and this is what Obama tapped into, and this was the whole ridiculous, the seas are going to roll back, and we're going to, his speech, his inauguration, and they, put him in front of the Roman pillars or the Greek pillars and stuff at the DNC, and they just tapped into sheer emotion. People wanted to be part of this historical moment of electing an African American, and it didn't matter who he was, in a lot of cases. And so then he came in as an ideologue and a community organizer who's used to just doing what he wants to do, and proceeded to, and I'll tell you right now that the real question after this election is what's the future of the Democratic Party. And Pelosi just won, her thing again today. And if they nominate this guy, if they make this guy DNC chair, who, is a 9/11 truther and a, clearly an anti-Semite. I mean, if they double down by going harder to the left,
they're gonna rip themselves to shreds, because they already lost. They already lost. The me and the Elliots, the people who were at least had common sense in their brains and were Bernie supporters. They lost us completely.
Oh yeah.
And who do they have left? Pretty soon, all they're gonna have left are just the people they've basically the people they've tied to the governments to the point where they don't know they don't have any other way of surviving, and they're gonna have the people that they can convince through the feels.
Yep. No, that's right. Through the feels, that's the way to do it. It's appeal to emotion. That's why they're in trouble. If you look at obviously the House and Senate and the White House, but Republican governor. Obama's legacy is a massive upsurge in GOP influence in state legislatures, state governorships, unprecedented. Okay,
and why? Let me see. I've actually got that statistic right here.
It's ridiculous. It's absurd the damage he's done.
So hold on. I'm pulling it up right now. So in that election, hold on. My photos is taking a second. Okay, the Democrats under Barack Obama. The worst losses since 1922. They lost 11 seats in the Senate, 60 seats in the House, 14 governorships, and 900 state legislative seats.
That's just staggering.
Like I said, never happened since 1922.
No, that's right. And the thing is, the one problem they have is at no point will they look and go, maybe our policies are wrong.
They won't look at themselves.
They can't do it. So that's why we see I can't believe I'm in a racist nation. I'm in you go, wow. That if they go further that way, the future of that party is highly problematic. Now,
I bet you 10 years max if they go that way. 10 years.
Oh no, I would agree. Yeah,
10 years max, and they're gone. I think probably. But the thing is, I will say this though, because I was watching while we were during the election night. I was and I watched a few compilation clips of it afterwards. I had the Young Turks on one of my tabs in my browser, and I was just I would look over occasionally just to sort of see how triggered are they getting yet.
Right.
And I remember it started. They were kind of smug. They had that smug we got this in the bag sort of look right at the beginning. And then every hour I'd look over and they'd get a little less certain and a little less certain, and then all of a sudden they're a little scared, they're a little frightened. They're terrified, and it just progressed. And then, of course, it came out, and then literally Cenk does that. Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. And then John Iadarola immediately stands up and goes, I can't believe there's still a sizable portion of America that's that racist. And I was like, really? Are you going to just keep doing this? This is why you're losing.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
It's like, do you really think people are going to vote for you if you call them racist?
Right. Look, in a sense, I said this. This is a very, and this gets to the core question we started with. How did Trump get elected?
Well, just not even Trump himself. Just how do we get someone with the idea and the mentality and the personality of Trump in? I don't even care if his name was Trump or Donald Trump, or if it was just some random dude from Texas or something. Just how do we get this figure in there?
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it's this. Look. It was so funny. Somebody said this on Facebook. Oh, everyone's so shocked. I can't believe anybody. I said, look, the whole system is designed so that anybody could become president. So why are we surprised when anybody becomes president, right? Yep. Did we think it would be Trump? No, of course not. But What happened was, and this is where both parties just got out of it, was, you know what? We're tired. People, Americans, you can sit there. This is the weird thing, is you can sit there and tell people. How long do you think you can sit and tell Americans, hey, you're going to have to let these people go in the bathroom with your daughters, and this is what marriage is. And look, you can have whatever position you want on that. It's American when somebody keeps telling you that stuff to say, fuck you, I don't need you to figure that out for me.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what we did. You know, the British were like, no, this is how you have to pay taxes. No, fuck you, we're not going to do that. I mean,
Fuck off.
This is how we
Fuck
operate.
off. We're going to do things our own way.
No, that's right. Well, I don't need you to do that. I just need you to make sure that I can find a job and feed my kids. That's what it came down to. And so, yeah, I mean, you got a Trump because, as we mentioned, the indistinguishable left and right business, where the Democrats and the Republicans became the same. This led to an appeal, combined with an information age, which led to an appeal and a growing appearance, or anyway, certainly a vocalness, of extremes on either end, right? So the radical left and then the alt-right, the nationalists, all that crap.
Yeah.
So they start screaming, and then people start freaking out and going into camps and
sequestering themselves from everything else.
Yeah. And in the middle of this are these politicians who are sitting and talking about things,
in such high-minded terms that no one can understand them.
Right. And ignoring the fact that, again, and then a guy comes along who goes, I know that you're losing jobs and things are hard. And he doesn't say, I know you're really worried about whether or not trans can use the bathroom that they identify with, right? We got to deal with that. And people are going, look, I don't care. I'm not prejudiced towards them. I don't want them in the bathroom with my daughter, whatever, but I don't care if they want to do that. That's fine. But you know what? I'm concerned about feeding my kids, or, the future of the country. And yeah, of course, there's extremists who are ridiculous and all that, but they're not the main people. The big shock and how the Young Turks can scream racist is how many of these people who voted for Trump voted for Obama. People vote for change.
A huge amount. Well, the thing is that's the thing. I think they might have even. The funniest part was, as I think now that I think about it, I think they actually did point out at one point that a bunch of on the show themselves, they pointed out that obviously a bunch of white people that voted for Obama voted for Trump, because there's no way he was going to win things like Florida and places like that, and Pennsylvania of all places. No way he was going to win anything like that if some of those same voters didn't go over. So the racism charge just doesn't work this time around.
No, it doesn't.
And I think
that will dissuade them from using it. It's easier than looking at their own stuff.
Exactly.
But what you've seen is, you had those midterms where the Tea Party and all that, right? And then the administration, of course, the IRS had targeted them, and there was other. But those guys got elected to block things and to fight things, and they didn't. And so the people had done it through the GOP, and they'd done the Tea Party. They were Republicans, but they were Tea Party Republicans. You had the Freedom Caucus, right? And all those guys were supposed to be doing it, and Boehner wasn't listening to them. The institutional McConnell. The institutional Republicans weren't doing it, so people said, well, what's the difference between, so in terms of the primaries, and that's what people should have realized. And there were a couple people who ran the numbers, but in terms of the primaries, that's what happened, is people said, you know what, it's all the same. So you know what, we've had enough of this. We've heard you say you're going to do this and do that. And, Rubio, Cruz, all those guys, fine, we like some of the stuff you stand for, but we heard it all before, and we did.
They also just refused
2014.
to. Well, it's like what people wanted them to say. They wanted them to address, the legitimate concerns of people, and regardless of how Trump did it, he at least did it. He talked about it, whether or not it was, the fact that it didn't even matter that he was right or wrong about things. It's just the fact that he put it on the table. None of the other guys were willing to put it on the table, and then of course, I do think that. I guess his bombastic nature kind of helped a little bit, because as you said, it's the American tradition to say "fuck you" when people try to do stuff. And I think that's kind of what he was just doing the whole time. And then one other thing that I just thought of was so you got the left doing all the identity politics crap. But that's fine if they want to do that. That's their prerogative. That's not whatever. That's fine. But the thing I think that also helped to lead Trump, especially from the right, because as you said, they refused to acknowledge any of this stuff, but also the fact that they kind of pandered to the left, saying, can I say this? This isn't too bad, is it now?
That's right. That's right.
We may disagree on some stuff, but I mean, I'm not any of these labels. And I mean, when they should have just said, "Fuck you," I don't care if you call me. Whatever.
Shapiro's great. Ben Shapiro's great about that, and he talks about, you let them define, Republicans, whether it was McCain or Romney, you get up there and you talk about economics while the guy calls you a racist. You can't, and you can sit there and go, I'm not going to respond to that. But you have to respond to it, and you have to respond. And that's his whole thing. Is he goes, the minute somebody does that, you hit them back and you hit them harder. And you go, no, actually, I'm not a racist, and you're a bad person for saying that with no evidence at all.
Exactly.
And you disarm them. You take the moral ground. But, one of the things that was said about Trump that was interesting, because we do, you can sit there and this goes back to Orwell. It's all about language, the PC thing and Milo and all this. You can sit there and say, hey, we have to do this and we have to talk this way and all that. But eventually, people go, you know what, that's not true.
But I don't want to.
Yeah, but that's not true. That's not what it is. So why are we calling it that? And you know what? I'm not responsible for your feelings. I can't continue to talk around the issue because you don't want to have your feelings hurt. And that was, earth-shattering. And one of the things that was interesting, and I think Coulter said this, and she's pretty extreme, and I heard it somewhere else too, that people with Trump, the problem with Trump and the polling and the expectations was that people on the right, or people who voted for him, took him seriously without taking him literally, and people on the left, or the people who didn't, took him literally without taking him seriously.
That's a good way to put
it. Does
it.
that make sense?
Yeah.
So when he says, it's really, I thought it was really well.
Well, I think my favorite Ann Coulter moment, it's Casey. You remember the whole video with everyone saying Trump was never going to win, and then as he's, with in the Hall of the Mountain King playing, something like that. Yeah. So I think I don't remember when she went on his show, but Coulter went on Mars' show. Now, personally,
I saw that.
I'm not a huge fan of Coulter. Overall, I like the fact that she goes out and she says bombastic things and is, she stirs up the pot. Don't necessarily agree with her on a lot of things, but I like that she's a provocateur, kind of like Milo, same kind of thing. But she went on Mars' show way back when, months and months ago, and she said, when they asked her who's the most likely candidate to win, she goes Donald Trump, and everyone laughs at her.
I remember that.
And then and then in this video, that's what starts the video. And in this video, as it goes on in the Hall of the Mountain King, you know that song, right?
Oh yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. And it starts playing very quietly in the background, and then it starts playing all these clips of like Trevor Noah on the Daily Show and Stephen Colbert and all these guys saying like, Trump, please run. You'll do us all a favor, and you'll let us win. And then all of a sudden, the music starts getting a little louder as the Republican candidates start dropping. And then it gets a little louder when he gets the nomination, and then it starts blaring on election night when all of a sudden Trump takes Florida, Trump takes Pennsylvania, Trump takes this, Trump takes that, and then at the very end it has the final fanfare, and Trump comes out and says, "Sorry, people, complicated business." It was like it's the funniest thing I've ever seen because it's like like you said, they didn't take him seriously, and that was their biggest mistake.
No, that's right, and they were so freaked out that he was going to be grabbing everybody's, whatever, and then he's going to build a wall and all this,
the fact that he said that, I don't know why they ran with that, because they turned it into a meme.
That's right.
Like, the thing is, the thing that we talked about this on the show too, but Trump never acknowledged the memes. He never did. He would make them, but he'd never acknowledge them. That was the problem with Hillary and Obama. Like, Hillary said, Pokemon, go to the polls, and then everyone cringes and goes, no, don't do it. It's like that's how you kill excitement. Whereas you had people online running around making things like they would I don't know. It's not necessarily a good thing to say, but you you make videos of dudes in clubs, that creepy dude that walks up to you, grabs her by the bush and goes, "Hey, spread it." And then it's just like, it's bad and it's stupid, but the thing is you look at it and in the context it's actually kind of funny. But the thing
it happened to you once, Ryan, remember?
What? Oh yeah. Okay, that's a different story. I got memed. Basically, I got memed hard. But so it's a stupid story. We'll tell it after the show's over. But
it's
talk about the meme. What do you think of the whole meme culture and the fact that he made them but never acknowledged them?
he's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm a super, like, I was outraged by Clinton's, Lewinsky thing for numerous reasons, but not least because it's the office of the President of the United States. So I'm real into even with Obama, I understand he's the President of the United States. I respect the office, okay? So when someone, unlike, again, people on the other side, when someone's elected, you give them the benefit of the doubt, you hope they succeed, and you're respectful, right, Mr. President?
You give them a chance. You give them a shot.
Yeah, but so him tweeting, and so, like, I was outraged. I mean, I was bothered when Obama, people are dying in Syria, and he's doing the selfie stick thing around the White House. I'm like, dude, really? Okay, fine, you're showing me what we've got, but respect for the office. So Trump's tweeting from there, but I'll tell you, man, he somehow knew how to tap in and use that media to his advantage. And if he inflamed people, and this gets into my questions about Bannon and stuff too, because I don't think he's the evil person that everyone makes him out to be.
Oh, I definitely don't. Oh, hey, Elliot, welcome.
So,
what's up, big guy?
oh, nothing much. Just got back from CS tutoring.
Oh, nice. So now, as I told her, so right now we're talking about like what history led to Trump. So we've already gone through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. Right now we're talking about meme culture, kind of, and
Explaining why this is why Trump won.
exactly. But,
Explaining that
from
meme.
a very long-term perspective, or something like
Yeah.
that. So we've gotten into
Okay.
like the actual election year, and Modarelli was talking about how. Well, you keep going.
Well, just again, how he managed to. He did an end run on the media. That was the other thing that drove him. And I'll tell you what, the reports of that meeting he had with the reporters was pretty hilarious. Where the guy said it was like a big firing squad or something, right? Where he just basically read on the riot act. But he used the media, he used social media and stuff to end run the press and somehow, get stuff out. Now, you set loose forces, as we mentioned, with the alt-right and, the extremists that might be dangerous. But, they're still the minority. This is what people tend to forget. I wrote a blog about it where I talked about how, you go to a party and there's always an asshole that's bugging everybody. He's drunk and obnoxious and stupid and, everybody wishes, you might disagree with them.
There might be one, there might be four.
Yeah, okay, but the problem is, it gets to the point where eventually, most people are there just to have a good time and interact. You're not there to be right. And so finally, you get rid of the guy, you throw him out, whatever. Everybody's happy that he's gone. But the next day, you remember him as the jerk. He was the exception, not the rule. You still had a good time or whatever, right? But the problem with the internet, of course, is we imagine that if you imagine that loud asshole at the party was representative of this huge contingent of the party, right? Rather than the anomalous couple of jerks that they are. But we have a tendency to forget that in the internet. And so you can leverage some bad things and bring some bad things out of the woodwork, which I think Trump suffered from. But, the whole notion that, the KKK supports him. And, okay, well, the Communist Party supports Hillary. So, you're going to brand her with that? No, you're not. There's always going to be people, who are going to side with one side or the other. It doesn't make anything. But he tapped into something. Now, as I said, I don't like him tweeting at the middle of the night from as the president-elect. I don't want him tweeting from the White House, for God's sakes. But he and Kellyanne Conway, who's another person who, when he was sending people, he was going to Wisconsin, all these places, and people are like, oh, this is a wasted effort. Why is he doing it? He conceded, Victor Davis Hanson was telling us, he conceded, Colorado and Nevada, those aren't places we're going to get it, so we're going to go here. They knew what they were doing, and
did you hear about the Clinton's campaign's AI that they had?
no.
Oh, they had I forget what it was called, but they actually had an AI that would run.
I know. I know what it was a it was Ada.
Ada. So
Yeah.
so basically, what Ada was an AI that would look at polling data, look at supporters, amounts of votes, electoral. So basically, do a bunch of calculations trying to figure out where Clinton should be, and when she should be there, and basically it would just tell where should we go and how long should we be there and what.
So
should we
Ada from Fallout.
Basically. Exactly. But the thing is okay, what happens? She loses. So, and the thing is, there were some reports that the Clinton campaign was going to unearth Ada right after they won and say, "Look at how we won, and AI did it." And then now, of course, they can't do that. So
Oh, gosh, this gets better and
And when
better.
it's
I
like-
love it.
I know.
Because
See,
that's
yeah,
the
Elliot.
thing. You can't simulate humans. Humans
That's
are
right.
random as hell.
No,
So,
that's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
like, nothing short of a quantum computer would be able to do that.
And
I
even
mean-
a quantum will probably make some mistakes.
Some
No,
mistakes.
You can't predict human behavior, though. That's the thing. They're not numbers. We were just talking about Swift's A Modest Proposal today, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a satire that he writes about dealing with the problem of poverty in Ireland. And he's like, I got this great idea. It'll work. We just need to eat babies.
Oh yeah, the modest
Oh, yeah.
proposal.
Yeah. And of course, he runs the numbers. He goes, look, the numbers add up. We'll have fewer Catholics. Husbands will stop beating their wives, right? He runs through all the benefits of this program. And
I don't particularly
goes-
like that last stereotype of Irish people, but okay.
no, he goes, look, this is great. I can't see any objection with it. Really? You can't see any objection? He's perfectly reasonable, right? But
Well, look, I mean, of
Swift,
course, he was
look,
being satirical, but it was the whole point was to point. I guess I would probably think the whole point was to point out that you can get people to agree to anything if you dress it
Well,
up
his
under the
point
right
is-
language.
His point is, if you're perfectly reasonable, in being perfectly reasonable, you become as inhuman as you are if you're perfectly bestial, right? I mean, at the time, the
You gotta
idea
find-
was that
you gotta
man
find
was a
that
rational
balance.
man. Right. No, that's right. And that science and technology is not going to account for that. I was talking to my students today. I said, you go over, and the guy who writes that, I said, the guy who wrote this, or, the voice he's taking on who proposes this, is a guy who spent all of his time in Snyder Hall, and none of it in my classroom or the philosophy classroom or the religion classroom. Because he's run the numbers, but he doesn't understand human nature insofar as we're able to, right?
It's kind of
And-
like you saw remember the second Avengers movie in Ultron. Ultron was created, and even in the comics, he was created to save humanity and help humanity. Well, what's the first thing that he thinks to do? Oh, to save humanity, you got to destroy it. You can't go go full logic on it. It just doesn't work.
That's right. And again, that's why I say all the time, this, the whole thing about the minute machines, you mentioned the quantum computer, the minute the thing becomes self-aware is humans are profoundly inefficient in terms of sheer scientific reason. So a machine will conclude, yeah, I have to exterminate them because they're not efficient. They're not working well. So,
And also,
it's Terminator, all that stuff.
yeah, one other thing I do want to go off on is I want to go back to language for a second because I feel like one of the things I noticed, and I had to look this up. So Lacey Green, immediately after it was announced that Trump won, she tweeted this. She said, "We are now under total Republican rule, textbook fascism. Fuck you, white America. Fuck you, you racist, misogynistic pieces of shit. Good night." Now I don't care about that last
lad.
sentence. I don't care about that
Real
last
fucking
sentence.
lad.
I don't really care about the last one because that's just textbook, race baiting and all
Breathe.
textbook identity politics. But I
It's
love how
just
they say
bitterness.
textbook fascism, and
Right.
yet the biggest fascist movement we ever had in the
right.
world was called National Socialism.
That's right.
I love how
That's the
they
one all said.
like repurposing language.
No, and this is all the Frankfurt School too. I mean, you see, the International Communist movement was enthused by the Russian Revolution, of course, and they were the biggest threat to Germany. So Hitler demonized them, the Reichstag fire, right? We got to suppress the communists, and he put them down, and so. But they were the National Socialist movement. And left and right is, as you know, a distinction between big government and small government, right? So we've talked about this before. The extreme right is the anarchist, and the extreme left is the totalitarian communist, right?
Pretty much.
The
The anarcho-communists.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
look, that post.
The communists, so after the war, right, the Soviet Union was obviously still there. And the socialists are to the right of, the National Socialists are to the right of communism on that scale, right?
Not by
They are
much,
by no means-
but
No, not by much at all. They're by no means a right-wing movement, okay? They're very much a left-wing movement. They're just a little bit right of the communists. Well, the communists took over all the academic institutions. And all the guys in the Frankfurt School were quick to point out that the Nazis were this right-wing movement, okay? Now, they incorporated nationalism and other things, which had been traditionally considered right-wing conservative things, but yeah, it's a completely leftist fascism. Was a big state thing, and it's much more dangerous now. Mussolini, who again invented the thing, there's a quote from him in Hayek's book. He said, "We were the first to realize that as the civilization became more complex, the individual would become less and less important," something along those lines, where the idea was that as civilization became more complex, the state had to take over more and more freedom. You couldn't give people freedom as civilization became more and more complex. And as we talk about this shift and what led to a Trump, and it's not a positive. I mean, like I said, I'm happy that Hillary lost in ways I can't possibly express. But but what happens, and this is what I was telling kids today, is we're so overwhelmed with information and everything that we begin to imagine that people try to convince you can't make these decisions about healthcare and about these things. So let us do it for you. And it becomes tempting to do it because you're overwhelmed as civilization advances. And as you know from my classrooms, I'm constantly battling to go, no, you can do this. Why would you want anyone to do it for you? Don't let them take that from you.
Exactly.
Because
well, I just think the biggest way to say it is you just say, you won't miss it until it's gone.
No, that's right. And it never goes quick. The loss of liberties is never an overnight thing. It's always incremental.
Oh, and, yeah, no, it's a big thing with the gun. I know that with the whole gun debate.
Yep.
Casey and Pierre.
They're big, scary, and black. We got to ban them, of course.
Okay, now Casey, like Casey, give some examples about the gun debate.
Well, the whole thing with the gun debate is that everyone, for example, there's a whole thing where everyone wants to say, okay, universal background checks. Okay, we'll get universal background check. That seems to be something we're going towards. But what's next after that? Because things are going to happen, but people always demand, what's it called? They want more stuff. They want more. So what do they do next? They'll probably come out. If you have a Democratic Party in power, let's have a registry. Well, once you have a registry created, you now know where everyone has guns and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And once you know everyone who owns guns legally, of course,
what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
If you say, okay, we're gonna ban guns or we're gonna have a forced buyback like what they did in Australia,
right?
Which they already had a registry, so when they wanted to do a buyback, they just said, oh yeah, we know where all you live, and they come in and they say, okay, you're gonna give us your stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and the key thing in that is, what they keep forgetting is, or they want people to remember is, hey, this isn't a right. The Constitution's so clear on this stuff. I don't have this right by grace of you. I have this right, according to the Founding Fathers, endowed by my Creator with these rights. So it's not like you can call in a debt or something, right? Like, oh, well, we only let you have it for a while anyway, but now we've decided. No, that's not how this works, And I've had this concern. We were talking about the Patriot Act earlier, and people say, well, if you're not doing anything illegal, why do you care? Okay, well...
I hate that line of reasoning, because it's erroneous. It's completely erroneous.
What if somebody decides that it's illegal to be a balding Catholic, English teacher?
That's pretty specific. It's pretty specific.
That's the thing is, you're acting like the Founding Fathers understood that you got to protect these things because you don't know who's going to be in charge or what the rules are going to be. So you have to... And, without getting into the complexity of protecting against terrorism and all that stuff, which, again, I don't envy those guys. It's a very, very difficult job. The language thing and the creep. Look, there's a logical fallacy, the slippery slope fallacy, which is to say because Casey was mentioning, because you keep a database, then you're going to do it. No, I'm not saying that you're going to.
No, but it gives them the tools to go that extra step very easily.
No, that's right. I mean, the great example, Jonah Goldberg does this, is if you set up a bunch of dominoes, right, to knock them down, you knock down the first one, and the percentage chance that the rest are going to fall down goes up, no matter what you do.
Rapidly,
too. It radically does. The further away you get from that starting domino, the lower the percentage. But still, right, you're still making it possible for those things to happen. And I'm telling you right now, you will see cases about people who want to marry their animals and stuff. You're going to see it.
Well, we live in Washington. I think it's like we are one of the only states that allows that. Well, doesn't allow
No,
marrying
it's illegal
animals.
now. It's
Oh no,
illegal.
we were ground zero for the whole getting rid of bestiality movement.
A man
Enum
in claw.
Enum claw. Yeah. Actually, here's another thing, and I love doing this.
One of our prouder moments. Yeah.
Yeah. One of our proudest.
Yeah. One of our proudest moments as Washingtonians. No, but here's another thing, and Casey and I and Elliot and James all pointed this out in the last episode, but one of the other hypocrisies that I loved, and we pointed this out because did you see the whole like California secede from the Union sort of thing?
Oh jeez.
But the funny thing is I noticed this, and immediately afterwards, the California was calling, "Oh, states' rights, we're not going to help you with immigration," and I thought, what a lovely irony. You California you wanna call states' rights, you want to call on the 10th Amendment, and you want to secede from the Union, where you're going to need guns to do that, and I think you have pretty much banned guns at this point.
Right?
Well, they didn't think that one through.
Nope.
No, I know. It's funny. You guys ever see the movie Tombstone?
No, I don't think so.
It's hilarious. But there's this moment where Wyatt Earp is leaving town, and he says, "I want you to know I'm leaving." He's a bad guy because he's killed his brother, and he says, "I want you to know I'm leaving. And it's over." And the guy just looks at him and goes, "Well, bye." And, you're expecting this big thing. And so it was funny. California's just a seed. And I was thinking, well, bye.
See ya. I mean, my response would probably be, have fun being on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Take you and your debt and leave. We don't need you.
And I tell you what, when you call us because you need us to put the riots down because you don't have any guns or anybody who can do it, right?
Or believe in guns. That's the biggest thing. They don't believe in guns. Oh, you just got to talk to them.
Yeah.
And when you have the inevitable riots and the inevitable, drug gang shootings that just erupt everywhere because they don't have enough money to fund the police force, and guns are so scary that the police aren't allowed to have them anymore. I mean,
rising sea levels combined with the fact they're in a constant state of drought. What could go wrong? It's simply.
I mean,
it's not even. There's so many things that like. First of all, like for California to secede, you'd need a constitutional amendment to do so, or you'd have to call another constitutional convention. Right. And even in that case, the Democratic Party itself would no, you're not leaving. If you guys leave, we're at a permanent minority status.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, well, they would lose.
Well, the best part is as you said, bye. I mean, it's if you want to I would say if California as a person came to me and said I'm out, and I'd say okay, how about and right as they're leaving, I'd be like, a little piece of advice, maybe stop growing those avocados and almonds.
Mm-hmm.
All those very water
Why would you grow those? Why would you grow things that require a crap load of water in a desert?
Yeah, but see, here's the thing though. The Victor Davis Hanson, you got to check him out. This guy's great. He lives on his family farm. Has had it for 139 years, and he works at the Hoover Institution, Stanford. So he drives in from Selma, and he goes past all these guys. He has to dig his well deeper every year, right, to get water. And he drives past these guys who are having to do the same thing every year. And then he comes into all these watered lawns, right? And in the most expensive real estate somewhere, in the country in some cases, Palo Alto and stuff. And reads about how they're voting to direct water from the reservoirs to increase flow in a river because the Native American legends say that there used to be salmon in this river, and they want to bring the salmon back to that river. Okay. And the insanity
Worlds
of
apart.
how. No, exactly, right? And you sit there and think, geez. And meanwhile, he's done a great deal of study on this. Back in the 50s and 60s, when they realized, they said, gosh, the population's going to blow up, so we're going to need a lot more reservoirs. And they built a plan to build reservoirs that would accommodate 60 million people in the state of California. Both those in the countryside, they would be able to water stuff, and be able to, the people in the cities would have what they wanted. And of course, they shelved those plans and they didn't build them, and now they're all bent out of shape. And he's like, these guys, they knew what they were doing. They knew almost to the number. They had predicted the population increase and made a plan for it, which had you followed it, you would be fine. And yet, they didn't do it. I mean, the insanity. And whenever they want to do a light rail project or something, who do they do it to? His point is that they're not willing to live with the consequences of their actions. They're willing to put them upon other people all the time, right? So we're going to redirect this river so that we can feel good about and hopefully get salmon back in this river that the Native Americans tell us once, by oral tradition, once had salmon in it. But we're going to keep watering our lawns while you guys are struggling to, water your crops.
It's.
And by the way, make sure I get my avocados, right?
Yeah.
It's like they want their cake and eat it too. See, the thing is, it's actually kind of funny. There's a way to solve this water problem, right? Mm-hmm. But people won't like the solution, right? What you do is you build desalination plants. They're expensive as hell to run, and they cost a lot of energy. But how do you supplement that? Well, A, California gets a lot of sun, and B, you use nuclear power, which people are like, oh, it's terrifying. But
space magic.
It'll provide the energy you need to run the plant to give all this water. But they're like, no, we can't do that because it's a combination of NIMBYism and this whole this neo hippie bullshit that goes on.
Yeah, no, that's. And
I'm like, why?
I also think it's also so. I don't know. I kind of remember the first moment. The moment I knew that I had probably shifted to the right was like about halfway through my summer job of working on a golf course. I think that was kind of the moment I knew I shifted to the right because for some reason I don't know what it is, but I've met a couple other people around here too that have similar stories. It's like, yeah, we were all left wing until we worked like a really a hard manual labor job or something like that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you realize, I get it now. I get it why people maybe don't want to be taxed so much and maybe don't want to, have the government intrude on their lives and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I get it now.
And look, that's where Trump. We come full circle to the question we began with. Where did Trump come from? That's what he came from. And increasingly, and as long as you didn't have an information age, these worlds were isolated. So people out in the countryside didn't feel like people were talking down their noses at them all the time. Right? But now, with the increase in media, you have all these people who, like you said, go out and they work hard every day, only to come home and be told that if they don't do what they're told, they're racist. And they're going, I work with 4 black guys and 2 Mexicans, and I love them, and we have a great time, and I bust my ass every day, and they bust their ass. I'm not a racist, and I'm not going to let you call me one. And they saw the Republicans kowtowing to the same thing as you mentioned, Ryan, going, oh, well, can I say that? And letting them define.
Is it okay if I support the farmers out in the fields that you're calling racist, even though they're
right? Nobody's up there, and the Tea Party sent all those guys going there, going, "Hey, stand up and go. These people aren't racist. All right, they're decent people working hard, but they're all afraid to do it because the left, dictated the terms, and Obama had set this thing up, and the alienation that was felt out there at the end. Again, the reason it happened is because it's America, for God's sake. I mean, people just get fed up and they go, enough. And they may regret it. Who knows? I mean, but I'll tell you, we mentioned the problems with the Democrats. If this guy succeeds, and by the way, everyone's like, oh, what'll happen to the economy? I don't know. The stock market's like at record highs. Gee.
I mean, it's about. Well, I mean, I think we're probably gonna have another downturn before we have a real good upturn.
Oh no, yeah, we are. We're due for another bubble
because Because once again, we've become. I mean, what happened the first time? We got too top heavy. Well, what happened? We're still too top heavy.
Because we didn't fix anything. They're like, here's a bailout. Here's a stimulus package that doesn't solve anything.
I mean,
that just made it
sometimes
worse.
you just gotta let the businesses die. Like, I get it. A lot of people are gonna be unemployed. A lot of people are gonna lose their money. It's gonna suck for a few years, but
no, that's Keynes versus Hayek. Yeah. No, you have to. If you interfere, all you've done is create another bubble. We're going to have another burst. But if he succeeds, if things get better, the Dems are really screwed. Really screwed.
They'll probably never win another election again. And in fact, you know what this is? You know what I think this is actually going to hinge on? Le Pen.
Le Pen?
Yeah.
Really?
Man, I'll tell you what.
I think it's hinging on Le Pen because if Le Pen wins, I don't think the left is going to win another election in the West ever again. At least another major one.
No, dude, that's an interesting thing. And the Matteo Renzi referendum, too, in Italy, the euro is poised on a knife's edge. I don't know.
Actually, did you see what I forget who it was. It was like the head of the EU or something. Did you see what he said about referendums a couple days ago?
What?
He literally said he sent him like a message to all the countries in the European Union, said stop holding referendums because it could be damaging. He literally told them, look, and here's what he said. I'm not even making. Oh, hold on a second. You guys, I gotta find this quote because this quote is just darling. It is so great.
Oh yeah. Find out who it is too. I'm sure it's that.
I need to find. I saw it in a video a while back. Let's see.
Is it Von Rompuy or anyway?
No, it was in a video by Computing Forever. Yeah, let's see. Where is it? Regressive News. Okay, here we are. Here, let's see if I can get this to go and not make noise. So here's the thing. So I got our quotes up. So basically, his EU's top bureaucrat has urged EU leaders not to hold any more referendums, for he fears other voters will also choose to leave the bloc. And European Commission, whatever, said it would be unwise for member states to give people a say as they could follow Britain's lead.
Well,
and then here's what he actually said. Hold on, I want to finish. Let me finish his quote though. He said, "Mr. Juncker said we can't deny or take away the people of Europe's right to express their views, but regarding referenda,
triggered.
But regarding referenda on EU membership, I think it is not wise to organize this kind of debate. Not only because I might be concerned about the final result, but this will pile more controversy onto the huge number already present at the heart of the EU. The moment there's a but, if you say we can have freedom of speech, but you've lost me. I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's right.
I'm walking out of the room."
We were talking about Milo today, and Milo is proving what he does is, and he has to do it this way. Somebody got all offended. Somebody posted something.
Triggered.
I said, look, you can disagree with his tactics, but his point is what Douglas Murray said, and it's the only way to prove it is through extremism, and that is the only society worth living in is one where your deepest held beliefs can be trodden upon.
I mean,
on
Dave Rubin's show, Dave Rubin is a well-known atheist. He straight up said atheists are stupid. And I remember watching this and I'm going like, I mean, I'm hurt, but I mean, it's a little sting. I can walk it off. It's
just like you what, mate?
Well, the thing is the thing I think about Milo is kind of to what you said is, I mean, I disagree with some of the things he says. Like, he's obviously a very business-oriented man. I kind of favor consumer a little more in that whole relationship and stuff like that. But the thing is he'll say these things, and I'm just like, you know what? I want you to say these things. I don't even care if I don't agree with him at this point, because it's going to get people mad.
No, that's right. And what he's trying to do, and this is what he's invaluable for and why he has to be extreme, is he's exposing them. This is what he's exposing people who profess free speech for what they are, which is people who support free speech as long as it's their idea of free speech.
Yep.
And he's laying that bare. Shapiro does the same thing. And I'll tell you right now, you look at these people demonstrating and, protesting the results and all this. I've said this before. You don't know what you're made of. You don't know what your quality is until you have to deal with something disappointing and a setback. That's where you find out what you're made of, when you have to work with adversity, not in victory. And these people are revealing themselves for what they are. And
hypocrites?
Yeah, completely hypocritical. I mean, this whole business with the Jill Stein recount, which is all political posturing anyway, but, that whole thing, you remember, if he questions the results, that's a threat to our democratic process. I mean,
and yet you guys are going to go out into the streets and burn things and throw stones through windows. You're going to destroy property.
Right?
It's like my dad and I don't really agree on a lot of like some of the free speech issues. Like, we had a whole argument about what comedians can and can't make fun of. I say I think they should be allowed to make fun of whatever they want. Whether you find it funny or not, it's up to you. My dad was like, no, I think there should be some limits, whatever. But he and I completely agree that you can have a protest, like in downtown Olympia, because this has happened so many times in Olympia, where there'll be a protest, they'll be marching through the streets or whatever, and some idiots will run through the crowd and throw bricks through windows and throw like Molotov cocktails or do stupid stuff like that. And my dad and I are completely on the same page, where we go, you guys are just giving an avenue out for these people who are just batshit.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, I get it if you want to be peaceful, but the thing is, when this happens, you got to grab that guy, throw him on the ground, and hand him over to the cops. But they're not doing it.
Right. That's exactly right. People would say the Tea Party was this and that. The Tea Party's demonstrations were always peaceful. They always cleaned up after themselves. Always. Okay? I mean, this was a big difference that nobody wanted to talk about. Meanwhile, the Occupy people are taking a shit in the middle of the park and leaving it. I mean, you're going.
Hey, not my problem.
Okay. Right. I mean, it's been pretty revelatory, but emotions are just so high, and they're entirely emotional people. They don't use their reason, and
Well, it's one reason why. Well, it's one reason why I felt so. Because I remember when I got up the day after the election day, I literally thought because I didn't have computer science that day. I woke up a little later. It was about 9 o'clock, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get on Facebook because I want to see what people are saying. Because I thought, I'll get on. I'll read some.
Wait, was this is the day after the election?
Yeah, I was like, I'll get on. Boy. I'll read some triggered stuff. It'll make me laugh, and then I'll have a good time. And I'm reading it. And at first, like the first 30 minutes, I was reading some triggered posts from some people that were in our class, and some other stuff like that. And I was just reading it. And I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. And then after a while, I was like, I just started getting my expression changed from like a grin to kind of like a almost disappointed look. So I was just like. These people that I had known, granted I wasn't friends with all of them. Like I didn't like. I mean, I didn't know if any. I don't remember if anything happened to like Daniel Gill or people like that. But like, I was never really friends with Daniel Gill, and I didn't really like him all that much. But at least he had a good head on his shoulders. I mean, at least he had a good head on his shoulders. Mm-hmm. But like. But I'll see people like I don't remember if they were talking about him necessarily, but people like him. People were just throwing stuff at each other. And the best part was I noticed none of the people who were even remotely pro-Trump. I mean, even the people who like yourself, never Trump people, but at least acknowledge that he's the least bad of the two options.
Right.
I mean, even people like that,
but he's not that dangerous.
Yeah. They weren't throwing any of the mud. It was all the people on the other side. I'm reading it, and I'm just getting more and more disappointed. And then some people were gloating and some other stuff like that. And I just got fed up with it. And I was like, I'm gonna post something on Facebook. I'm gonna post it, and I'm gonna leave. And I'm not gonna get on my phone for the rest of the day. Just because I was like, I'm fed up with this.
Oh yeah, no, it has been pretty ridiculous. It still is. I mean, I was as a teacher, I just. And I said this to my kids today. I said,
don't tell Elliot what happened that day after for you.
Happened? Oh, well, they called me in the morning, the sub line. They're like, hey, can you come in and sub? We got a ton of people out today. And I was like, what? And I don't know Elliot, but no. Because you saw all the university people who couldn't go to school. I'm like, I know some of my colleagues were like, oh, I just can't face the kids, And
Ellis, was he there?
Let's not name names.
Yeah, he was there. I mean, no, he was there. I mean, he did.
Okay.
But it's just,
I think I know who wasn't there. I'm not going to name
any
them,
of
though.
my students who, when I see my former students, if at any point I gave you the impression that somebody who didn't do something the way you thought they did must be a racist and ignorant, then I failed you completely as an instructor, right? I was like,
I mean, it wasn't. On. I mean, if that was ever the case, it's not just failure; it's it's detriment.
No, that's right. I mean, that I had to, so my posts were like, hey, everybody, just take a deep breath, okay? Look, the founding fathers, the whole reason, and this is the interesting thing about this, the whole reason that people were freaking out is that Obama turned the executive into something out of control, and the legislative didn't do their job, which was to check the executive. Okay,
that's probably another reason. That's probably another reason why Trump got in is people were probably just like, I mean, the fact that the legislative just wasn't checking the executive at all.
No, that's exactly it. This is they made this for themselves. The whole thing appeared to be in cahoots. Nothing was happening. They weren't checking one another. Party trumps. I love the end of Nigel Farage's bits. Quite frankly, you didn't have the balls to put country before party.
Yep.
That's the thing, they didn't. So you'll see in these investigations, Elijah Cummings or whatever, they just spout the party line instead of going, look, your job is to check the executive, whatever your party is. And the founding fathers, they sat there and they go, what if an asshole gets elected? Oh, you're right. We better put some things in place to make sure that that's not too disastrous. And they did. So even if Trump is the asshole you make him out to be, okay, there's a system in place to deal with that.
Attorney General Trey Gowdy.
Yeah, dude, don't tease.
I want that so bad. I don't even care that I don't agree with that man on anything. I want him there. I want him there because he will go after everybody.
That's right. He's a bulldog, and he'll go after the truth, and it's about the law.
That's the fact. The moment he said the fact that every time I watch him, he says the word. It's he just says the word the law. You are not above the law. It's about the law. The law. The law. The law. And I'm like, applause to you, man. You speak to me.
No, and that's again what I said was, I think that's another thing that explains Trump, and that is in the Hillary thing. Look, that system is built, and you can check somebody with it, unless that person is above the system, which is what Hillary Clinton manifestly was.
Yep.
She was outside the rule of law.
Aristocracy.
And that represented, yeah, I mean, that's what it was. And it was so clear that people just weren't, the system can survive a shitty person as long as the law prevails. But if you're above the law, the system can't survive. We really dodged a bullet. Because, again, clearly, and if he's out of line,
like you said, clearly there was something wrong with this woman's way of dealing with other people and her politics and stuff like that.
Can't we just drone him?
His name was Seth Rich.
Oh, just shoot him. I'm like, everyone suspected. Like, Hillary, you're not sneaky. We know you did this. We just can't prove it.
And then she went and lied 24 times to Congress. I mean, it's just.
Well, I mean, I love when I went back and I watched a bunch of the Trey Gowdy when he did the committee for Benghazi.
I was doing Gowdy porn for a while. I mean, he's so awesome, dude.
Well, I remember watching him, and like I said, I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff. I really don't. I mean, I'm a little more left than he is, and he's a little too conservative for me. But still, the fact that the dude just puts aside all politics, does not care, and mercilessly goes after people who have obviously disobeyed the law, and does not ever relent.
No.
That is a man I can respect. With the mightiest of respect, and I met some people. I met some people here just for fun. There were some people that I met, and I showed them videos of Trey Gowdy, and I didn't even care. These people were left wingers, but I didn't care. I was like, so what do you think of this guy? And the first thing they said was, he's a little mean on Secretary Clinton. And I was like, come on, come on.
Oh, dude, he's so great. Jim Jordan. Even Chaffetz is good in terms of in those things going, hold on a second, just go back here for a minute, right? I mean, I love it. And he's so good. The one that I loved was he was asking Hillary Clinton, he's like, if you were investigating this, wouldn't you want to talk to this person? And she keeps going, well, the State Department did this. He's like, no, that's not the question. Wouldn't you want to talk to this person? And he goes, and it's not a trick question. The answer is yes, right? I mean, obviously, you would want to talk to this person. The way he's able to do things, I mean, you can tell he was a tremendous prosecutor. There's no doubt about it.
He turned everything into a yes or no question.
Right.
Pretty much. I mean, he left no avenue to do any kind of doublespeak or anything.
Right. And then Elijah Cummings, it's so funny. Anytime the guy is so well prepared, and he's just so... I really wish. I mean, the Sessions bit is controversial, but I really wish Trump had made him Attorney General because, oh my God.
I mean, I wanted a Trey Gowdy Attorney General. I wanted a Milo Press Secretary. I wanted and just because Casey would like me for saying this, I want Skrelly to be in there somewhere.
Oh God.
I don't know. I just want. I mean, for the first time in my life, I was like, you know what? I want just an entire cabinet full of rabble rousers and just shit talkers, and then I want an Attorney General who will keep them all in line.
Yeah,
keep these animals in line.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude. I'll tell you, man. It's so funny, this whole shark feeding frenzy on the cabinet picks and all this stuff, because, and I told you guys.
It started with Bannon. It started with Bannon.
Yeah. But I told you this when we talked in October, and that is, if anything, I was never Trumper, but if he could burn the whole thing, look, if checks and balances come back, even if, Trump does crazy things and the legislative is forced to do its thing, if the government starts functioning the way it's supposed to, okay, then this is positive. This is all positive. I fear that we might have just bought ourselves a little more time.
Until another Democrat comes back.
Yeah, right. But if they go hard left, if they double down on the Bernie thing, and the big thing now, and this is what all the conservatives are starting to recognize, the big thing now is, first of all, Trump's got to succeed and create jobs, and then the demographic shift that's coming from the indoctrination that's happened on the campuses has got to be battled, and how to do that. I don't know. Hollywood is.
Well, I think it starts with Milo. It starts with people, like he did to me. He shook up my internal thoughts. Like I always tell people, it only takes one little poke, and to get you to think. And if you just get a little bit of a push, pretty soon the ball starts rolling.
Yeah.
And I mean, Milo might not work on everybody, but I mean, you got Shapiro, who's a little more mild mannered, but maybe you get people like I want people like Larry Elder out there. I want people.
Yeah.
I want every single person that disobeys the left's identity politics to get out there and just create havoc.
Yep.
Because what I think it is, I pretty much think the generation between about 25 and 40 is pretty much done. There's not much you can do to them to change their politics. They're they're pretty much left wing forever.
Yeah.
You're not gonna do anything there. So you got to go back to the colleges and to the very young people, which I am actually genuinely surprised at, like how many people I've talked to just on my campus who, at first they seem kind of left wing, but then you get a little deeper and a little deeper, and pretty soon you realize, not really. These people don't really identify. I mean, sure, these were Bernie supporters. Like what I said. I think Democrats lost the Bernie supporters because the Bernie supporters were more about fuck you to the system than anything else.
Yep.
I don't think most of them really cared about a lot of the things he was putting forward, because like you said, most of it was fairly ridiculous. And like I said earlier, the more and more I see college people doing crazy crap, the more I'm like, yeah, I don't really want free college anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I
mean, Elliot, am I being truthful here?
You're not wrong, but I would honestly just think the thing, something has to be done about the debt, but free college isn't the answer. Like we said before, it's like STEM subsidies.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get people out, get a lot more people in the STEM fields. Like that's
I mean, it's an interesting problem, but the debt and how you're going to pay for things, and how, again, history. People got into this with me, but. And I mentioned this before, Bernie sold his soul. I mean, the fact that he went and endorsed her, and they ran an establishment candidate in what was clearly an anti-establishment year, was what they can't handle is they're used to being the revolutionaries.
But they're not anymore.
No, that's right. They see themselves as perpetual revolutionaries. And this goes back to the Frankfurt School, and the whole idea was, you had to have conflicts and exploit identity politics and an oppressed class. So you just grab onto the next oppressed class so you can appeal to people's emotion and make them feel morally superior because they're going to give transvestites access to whatever bathroom they want or whatever. You just find the latest thing to grind, and then people can feel good about themselves. Okay, which is all a simplification, right? Because it masks the real problems that need to be dealt with. And creates a kind of opiate and a self-feeling, women. So this was overall misogynistic. Look, I got 2 daughters. I want a woman president too, but I want my daughters to be a good person first. So if I
want a woman president. I remember. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I remember I think it was in the weeks leading up to the election, I saw 2 posters, which was just outside my dorm room on a big board where there's all these, events going on, whatever. Most of it's harmless. It's just like, oh, do this, do that, whatever. There were 2 posters for 2 events. One was called Gender and Politics, and what the first or whatever. And it was talking about, how, what will the first female president do? And then the second one was the year feminism one, how we got to the first female president. And I remember looking at these Well, I remember thinking, no, the year feminism will have won will be when we elect a woman based on her merits.
Yep.
I mean, I would say Le Pen will be a pretty good step forward.
Well, and you know what? My brother pointed this out. Everyone's like, oh, we don't have a woman president, or we're just still behind the time. Hey, you know what? Margaret Thatcher, Theresa May, the West has plenty of female leaders. That's not the issue. America's ready for it, too, assuming it's the right woman.
Clinton is obviously not the right woman.
No, that's right. My favorite meme was Satan and the devil, or Hillary and the devil, and Hillary saying, "You told me I could be president of the United States," and the devil saying, "You told me you had a soul."
Damn.
Nice.
It's so bad, but God.
I mean, there was one of my favorite. I actually made a meme the other day. Have you ever heard of the game XCOM?
Oh no.
What, you have?
Oh yeah.
So you know the whole story about how XCOM will tell you things are like 1% certain and then they somehow happen.
99% chance to hit to save your guy from being mauled by a berserker. Miss.
Right.
Crit.
So what happened
is panics.
We were texting each other back and forth one day, and then I think it was Casey sends me a graphic that shows on election day Clinton 98.1% chance to win, Donald Trump 1.6% chance, with the caption saying XCOM chances, boys. And then 30 minutes later, I texted them back with a picture that literally is a picture of it's two pictures of Clinton, one with her with a smile and one with a shocked face, and the top one literally said, "I am a genius." The bottom, "Oh no."
It was Ryan. That caption said Hillary plays XCOM.jpg.
Pretty much. I am a genius. Oh no.
Oh man, I'll tell you, it was surreal watching that thing. And watching the commentators just go, what?
And like the only one who didn't lose his cool was Wolf Blitzer, and even then, I think that's just because I think he stopped caring a long time ago. But
right.
Wolf Blitzer was looking for his testicles. He wasn't sure where they were. He was more preoccupied with other things.
Yeah, but I think the one I loved the most was Rachel. I love Rachel Maddow was the one I loved the most because she just looked at the camera and didn't like say anything for like a couple of minutes. It was just like, "Yep, that's what happened." Because I don't think they had anything in the teleprompter written down for her because they never thought this was going to happen.
No, that's right. They had no plans. And I'll tell you, man, I mentioned how you handle loss. The fact that she didn't come out and those people stood there all day, all night, and she didn't have the grace to come out and talk to them and thank them right there for being there, that tells you everything you need to know. I just couldn't believe she. And then, so Podesta's out there going, we're not going to give up while she's calling Trump. Okay. The fact that you didn't have the wherewithal, and now there's all these rumors that she was drunk and she just, out of control and all this.
Whatever.
I don't know.
Irrelevant.
That, but what's relevant is gracious in defeat, and honoring the people who did that, caring about the little people, as they always claim to be the party of the little people and all that. Those little things, they matter. They matter a lot, and they speak a lot about what kind of person you are. This Trump calling the people, the families of police officers who are, I've been hearing that he's been doing this, that when a police officer's killed, he's calling the family himself and talking to them, that kind of stuff. Shit, that's a big deal, man. If
it's a people person.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to watch. But as far as how we got here, we've talked about a lot of things that happened. And in an American sense, it's the same with Brexit. And I wrote a blog to them about it. It's, everyone's telling them, oh, it's a done conclusion. We're going to stay in. It'll be close, but, we're going to stay in Brussels. And, the British people eventually said, you know what? And John Hampden, against ship money, the colonists in the New World protesting and, throwing the Boston Tea Party, the Anglo-Saxon spirit of independence, which, again, is unique to the English-speaking world. It is spread, but that's where it started, which said, I don't need you to tell me how to do this stuff. I just need you to make sure that I don't get attacked by outside invaders or, whatever. That I need you to make sure the roads work and all that.
Yep.
I can do this myself. That spirit, it's Captain America in the Civil War, right? That whole, isn't that great? Is the power better in someone else's hands or in our own? And the answer is in my own, because I know, all right? And I don't need you to do it for me.
That's the true brilliance of that movie and that story. It's just the fact that, sometimes the whole world's telling you, no, don't do this, but if you know it's the right thing,
I got a T-shirt, man. I got my T-shirt that says that. No, you move. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. You plant yourself by the thing and you say, no, this isn't right.
I do actually. The other thing that just annoys me about it, like you said, they can't admit defeat. I think probably the biggest, and I'll share a joke that I made last stream as well, because when we were admittedly gloating a little bit, but not too bad. One of the things that I said that because I was calling out the Young Turks and a bunch of stuff. one of the things that annoyed me the most, and I think this is a big problem with the left, the fact that even when they can't even say they're wrong. Like one of the things Cenk Uygur said is he said at the very beginning, "Hey, I was still more right than everybody else. Everyone said it was going to be a blowout by Clinton. I at least said it was going to be really close." And I'm like, "You're still wrong. Yep. Can you at least say that word?" And just never said it. And then one of the things I made a joke about is I said Cenk Uygur is the type of guy who when he goes home and he needs to watch, he says he watches videos and reads about the opposing argument. He's the type of guy that when he's watching like a video of someone making an opposing argument, he'll talk to himself so he doesn't have to listen to it.
Yeah. That's I watched him in a debate with D'Souza, and that's what he does. He's already decided what he's going to say. He's not really interested in what you have to say. And I'm sure you've experienced this with people. And one of the things I like about Chris Christie was he used to call reporters out for that. It was one of the best moments. A reporter asked him a question, and he started to answer, and then he stopped, and he said, "Okay, now you just rolled your eyes before I've even finished my answer. So you're not really interested in what I have to say. So if you would please not ask another question, because I want to answer people who are actually interested in what the response is." And I've done that in meetings now where I go, "Look, you're not really interested in what I have to say, so why did you ask?" And people hate that when you call them out on that. But that's often a practice on the left. They're not really interested in what you have to say. They've already decided that they know what your opinion is and that they know you're a racist or whatever. So, again, you go, why are you here in this conversation? If you've already decided, just leave. We don't need you here.
Taking up space.
Yeah, I mean, but he doesn't. Oh, Dinesh, you went to jail. I mean, come on. And you're like, dude, Crowder's impersonation of him just slays me every time.
That's why. I mean, Crowder sometimes, I have disagreements, but I mainly just like him because he's one of the only comedians nowadays that's funny, and that's another thing that I've noticed. Have you noticed that a lot of the comedians who are either apolitical or right wing tend to be a lot funnier nowadays?
Yep.
Like I used to find Marr hilarious, and I watched his last special, and I was like, this is boring.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like when I'm gonna go see Milo in January, which I hope you can come. One of the questions I want to ask him are we, as a movement, especially this young mischievous generation, I say, are we funnier because we have better material or just because we have better sense of comedy?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably a combination of both, but I think it's just because we have better material. Because I mean, these people are infinitely funny people.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too is the crucial thing, and this is Pope and Swift, and guys who used to write satire, like Modest Proposal and stuff. And I've said this many times. You can't take yourself too seriously. If you don't take yourself too seriously, then you're good to go. Now, and you don't have to take life too seriously to lead a serious life. That's the other thing that people, well, how can you joke about this? Look, you have to joke about it. Okay? If you can't, then you're taking yourself entirely too seriously. And if you take yourself that seriously, that means you think you're like different than everyone else and better than everyone else, right?
Well, that also just sounds depressing.
Yeah.
I mean where's the fun? Granted, we were too young to really remember it, but like 9/11 jokes nowadays are kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
They're funny in context. They have the potential to be hilarious.
I mean, granted, you never just show. It's never usually 9/11 jokes are never made about like they're never made it like just with the full scope in mind. It's usually like, for instance, you're watching a training a video from like a pilot on Delta Airlines. He's sitting in the cockpit and he turns around and he goes, "Hey, welcome to Delta Airlines. I hope you enjoy your flight." Now, first, and he starts talking. All of a sudden, in the background, you see a twin tower coming towards the plane window. Like that kind of stuff, I think is funny. Where it's just you don't expect it and it comes out of nowhere. It's shock humor.
Right.
But
r/ unexpected jihad.
Exactly. I mean, it's the idea. Well, it's just the idea that be unafraid to take because that's how you deal with horrific things. You just got to make fun of it. At the end of the day,
black comedy is really funny. I love black comedy. It's just one of my favorites.
And again, it's how you do it and what you're doing it for. I mean, the comedians, they won't even go to college campuses anymore. I mean, that's how bad this whole thing's gotten. That's why, how is it safe to laugh? You watch some of these old roasts that they used to do, in the 60s at Sammy Davis Jr., some of the race jokes they make, the gay jokes they make. I mean, people would have a conniption anymore.
Oh, they would burn him alive on the stage.
Oh, it'd be ridiculous, right? Why? Because people are getting their feelings hurt, you know. And you sit there and you go, look,
I mean,
man, if you can't laugh at yourself, you know, gosh.
I mean, if I was given the option to bring a single person back from the dead, I'd bring back George Carlin, just because I want to see what he says about all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, granted, I mean, I don't even care if the dude tended to be more left-wing. It's just the fact that he went after everyone relentlessly.
Right. Yeah.
I just...
And again, that's what comedians should be doing. I mean,
here's another thing that I just thought of that helped lead to... that helped lead into Trump, especially the fact that the media has now gone from being the people who are supposed to actively oppose and be suspicious of government to basically being in cahoots with them.
Yeah, no, that's a huge problem, and that they've run it into a real problem, and they're desperate because their credibility is shot, and so. They're starting to, you know, now this whole thing, and you guys, I mean, you got to be watching this whole thing about fake news, how you know, Zuckerberg's like, oh, we're going to monitor, who's going to decide what's fake news? Who gets to decide that?
I mean, that's a big problem. I stopped getting my news from Facebook and any of the main news sources. Like, basically what I'll do to get news is I'll monitor, like, r/world news. I'll monitor, like, Google occasionally. So there's a couple of YouTube channels. But then the funny thing is I always keep an eye on 4chan, just because there's the off chance that there'll be something on there that will get there first. Like, I remember, like, remember the shooting in Bellingham or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, that was on 4chan an hour after it happened.
Huh.
And the news had not picked it up yet.
What was this?
Yeah, there was like a shooting in no, it wasn't
the mall.
There was a mall in somewhere up north of Seattle. And it was like a few months back or something like that. And I saw a post on 4chan about it, and that's how I heard of it. And I looked on Google, and there was no mention of it by any news source. And I was like, is this even real? And then the next day, I look it up again, and then sure enough, real. So.
Yeah, the whole, because, you know, that one professor put out the fake news site, and you know, some of these places were legitimate news sites that, you know, do research, and they just happen to, you know, present stuff from the right side of the aisle. And you're like, wait, who made you the arbiter of what constitutes fake news? You don't get to do that. I mean, look, it's messy, it's noisy, it's like everybody talking at the same time. Yeah. But this is what happens when you uncork the Pandora's box of information overload. You know, and Milton's clear about this in Areopagitica. Look, the only time you have to worry is if you shackle truth. You have to just let it. Truth will always, and this is what happened in this thing. The truth will always come out, okay, and it will always victorious. It doesn't need help, okay. If you believe in truth, it doesn't need help. The only thing it needs is for people not to tie its hands, and you know, because you run the risk when you start censoring and doing all this stuff. Is it messy and difficult? Yeah, and it means your responsibility. My responsibility as an educator is that much more difficult, you know, because I got to make sure that people can sift and think for themselves.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's important to do that, especially in this day and age where things can be so stupidly obviously fake, but made to look pretty convincing. I mean... Yeah,
I mean, the blasting of Bannon, the Breitbart thing is an interesting thing. I mean, and Shapiro was pretty clear. He does. I don't think he's racist, but he's got a problem with him.
Tell her I wish her the best.
Yeah. Yeah, no. The reason I would rather have Bannon is just the fact that, like,
because we're recording, but we're
Elliot.
Yeah, what?
I mean, you got the mic on and you're talking to Matt, whatever his name is.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. By the way, but the reason I wanted Steve, I liked the idea of Steve Bannon, at least in principle, is just the fact that Breitbart basically exists to, you know, trash talk the main news and to call them out. I mean. That's all. That's all they're really around for. And I mean, the fact that everyone has to resort to saying they're a bunch of white nationalists is just stupid.
Right.
I mean, the white nationalists exist on poll. That's all they exist on.
Yeah.
Poll.
That's it. They don't have any. I mean, okay. What real world power do they have? They have Idaho, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's basically
that. Yeah, totally. I mean, again, you sit there and people were like, oh, this is like George Wallace's America, we still live. I'm like, look, the dude lost badly because he was a fringe, okay? They're still a fringe movement. Don't guess because they shout a lot on the internet that a lot of them, or that it's this big movement, you know? I mean, but people are so scared. That was the thing, is you realize people are terrified. And it was like, you know, oh, I'm going to be incarcerated and taken away because I'm gay. What? What on earth?
I mean, I was reading tweets, and they're like, you know, what was the tweet I read? I'll see if I can pull it. There was a tweet I read not too long ago. Hold on a second. It was one of the most ridiculous and over. Oh my God, where is it? It said, please hug your LGBT friends, your non-white friends, your female friends, your non-Christian friends. America just told us we don't matter.
Oh,
by some dude, and I'm like, what? I mean, you're the one who's saying that you don't matter anymore. We never said this. Yeah, it's so
putting words in people's mouths.
Oh, but you remember that? That Lacey Green quote that I quoted a while back.
Yeah.
You know, with the fascism and thing. Before Trump was elected, regardless of the outcome, we are clearly a deeply divided and broken country. So much work ahead to mend, heal, and restore the in the USA. After Trump was elected, we are now under total Republican rule. Textbook fascism. Fuck you, white America. Fuck you, racist, misogynist, piece of shit. Good night.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why you're losing, guys. I don't know what I don't know why to tell you. This is why you're losing.
Yeah. And you wonder why people don't vote for you and don't like you. Huh. I can't even imagine. If I have to explain that to you, I don't know that there's much hope for you, that you don't understand that.
I mean, if that needed to be explained, if that needs to be explained to you, I mean, you don't deserve to be in politics.
No, that's right.
Because you don't know how to play. You've forgotten how to play the game.
Yeah.
It's like when someone, you know, it's like someone deals you a hand of 5-card draw on poker, and then you and then you think it's Texas Hold'em. I mean, you're not even playing the same game at this point.
No, well, and the worst part is what you've done is you've revealed something, and that is that I can't trust you, because clearly when you were saying we all had to be united, etc., you didn't actually think that. You were thinking that you were talking to these, you know, racist, fascist bigots. You just were figuring that you weren't going to have to deal with them, but you were thinking that's what they were. Yeah? At no point did you stop and go, maybe I was wrong about these people. Yeah? And that's the most essential thing. So what you've done is revealed that you never really thought much of the rest of us anyway.
Yeah.
And that, again, if I'm not the problem, there is no solution. If you're not going to look at yourself and reevaluate your own position, you know, maybe you ran a bad candidate. Maybe if you think it all comes down to the issues that you're sure are central, you know, LGBT, all that stuff, you know, I got news for you. The vast majority of those people out in rural America, they don't really give a shit what bathroom you use. They just want to be able to get a job and take care of their kids. Mm-hmm. It's not that important to them. You made it important because you think it's the most important thing. But you're living in a bubble. And if you can't recognize that you're living in a bubble, okay.
I'd probably say I'll probably start wrapping it up here. I think we could probably say in the grandest context, the main reason that we got to this point was because at a certain point, you know, the Frankfurt School infected academia, and they brought up a whole bunch of people who don't know how to argue and only know how to play the identity politics game, and they played it, and it worked for a little while, but then at a certain point, this is the point where it stopped working, and they don't know why it didn't work.
Yeah, well, because and the thing about the Frankfurt School is, I mean, the whole thing about it is it preempts argumentation because it makes everything relative. I mean, it's just complex topic for another show, and you'd have to read some stuff that's very painful to read. But yeah, the idea was, but it's so intellectual. It's intellectualism. I mean, it's mental masturbation. The idea is you can't really get an answer, so let's just talk about all this stuff, right? And it's all relative and all that stuff. And if you can do that, then you can obfuscate enough to make people feel confused and just convince them that they're stupid. It's the emperor's not wearing any clothes. And so you had this whole class of intellectual and academically indoctrinated people on the, you know, in these little blue areas, who were quite sure that their way would prevail, but had no means to make sure that it would, or to argue for it, as you noted, and who weren't going to go out into the countryside, and who, by definition, regard those people as unenlightened bumpkins. And Americans traditionally don't respond well to being told out of hand, without any evidence, that they're bumpkins and racist and negligent. That they just don't, and they're going to kick back, and that's what we did.
Indeed. I mean, whether or not, we really like Trump a whole bunch. I mean, I like the meme worthiness. That was like my favorite part of it.
Meme man makes America great again.
Exactly. He was he won via meme magic. But I mean, at the end of the day, whether you like him or not, I mean, you can't really blame. You can't really blame the American people for creating him. I mean, we didn't create him. I mean, the parties, basically the parties and the establishment parties did. And
that's right.
Neither one of them are blameless on this point. That's basically the whole reason I wanted to do this, is because I hear people blaming both sides for it. I'm blaming either side individually for it. I'm like, okay, sure, the left did a lot of things, but the right has a little bit of responsibility for this too, because they didn't stick up for themselves.
Well, look, and I'll tell you, and we can talk about the Frankfurt School as the left thing, but really, we're talking about Yaleys, right? Harvard guys, elitists. It doesn't matter what party you're in. These guys had all come through these, Ivy League halls and these clubs and cliques and intellectuals, and they ran in the same circles, and they all got out of touch. They all were in this bubble. So the Republicans thought it was about this, and, that if they could use this, they would appeal to people, and they would take the high ground, and conservative principles. Well, conservative principles are difficult to articulate, and if you can find a way to articulate them to the common man, which again is something that I try to pride myself on, is being able to make complex things intelligible to people who, don't spend all their time reading books. And they just, they're totally to blame for it. They all got in this bubble where they were quite sure, that they knew what was right. And the Tea Party, people sent them messages from the countryside in the form of the Tea Party and stuff. And the Republican establishment chose to ignore it. Boehner and McConnell and these guys, even when, Jordan and Ted Cruz was filibustering or whatever, they didn't stop things, and they decided, well, we're not going to shut down. Look, man, I don't care if you shut down the government, stand up for something. But they kept giving in and increasing the debt and doing all this stuff. Yeah, they made them too. People got to the point where they were like, is it different? Okay, I'm in, because I'm tired of the same thing.
Yeah, and not just different, but really different.
Yeah.
Because, there's a little different. Bernie was a little different.
Right.
Trump was really different.
Yeah, Bernie was still a career politician. That would have hurt him. He's a guy who hasn't worked a job other than for a government. He failed at everything and then got on the public tip, and he's been milking it for however many years, right? All while spouting ridiculous, crazy honeymooning. His whole thing, there was a great clip after the Castro death. They're like, well, Bernie, what about the stuff that Castro, it was from years ago, but, what about the stuff that Castro's done to people? Well, he's given them free health care. So if you kill people, as long as you're given free health care, that's okay? Right? Where's the omelet?
And plus, if you look
it's okay to break eggs?
I would probably have said, have you seen a hospital in Cuba? They don't look too good.
They won't let the Red Cross in to evaluate the medical system.
Or they won't let Amnesty International in. No,
right. Right. Yeah. It's ridiculous. But at any rate, both parties, undoubtedly, the institution itself, and if there's a breath of hope in this, again, is that we'll have to rely on the law again, not on a party. Okay? And this will be the test of if we can pull this thing back from the brink. And that is, and this is what I keep trying to tell people, is you don't need to worry about that. You don't need the government. Just take care of your stuff. Okay? And the system, if the laws, a guy like Gowdy or somebody, if we go with the laws, the way the Founding Fathers established them, we'll be all right. Okay? But we're the exception. This whole society is the exception, not the rule in human history. If it should be difficult and uncertain and fearful, well, most things in life that are worthwhile are going to be difficult anyway.
Hey, we're breaking. As someone who's studying science, they always say the moment you feel uncomfortable is when it means you're ever closer to an important discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. Well, once again, thanks for coming. Not in an interview this time, and chatting with us a little bit. And well, I'm gonna try to keep bringing you on because I like having the literature references. That's really awesome. All right.
Well, cool. It's awesome.
Indeed.
All right. We'll see you guys soon.
All right. See
ya.
See ya.